Hey, what's up, guys? Node investor here. I was looking at the charts, just got back from a couple of days away, and I figured, why not do a live impromptu analysis of the charts going into the weekend? I was going to post a video, then I thought, nah, let's just go live. Let's just do a quick update. So that's what I'm going to do. It's going to be a quick live stream today. I keep it about a half hour, give or take. But then what we'll do is I'm going to schedule a live stream for tomorrow, midday, or more like mid-morning my time. And I'll do a full live stream chart review at that time. And so that's the plan for now. But I wanted to do a quick update because, well, the selling pressure continues. And I want to give you my thoughts around what capitulation is, how to spot a potential bottom, at least a bounce, imminent bounce, that sort of thing, right? So a little bit of a educational piece, if you will, but certainly going to give you my analysis on the charts and some things to look at. Three awesome crypto live streams at once. Oh man, it's a busy day for live streaming, huh? Well, I'll keep it short, and I'll let you guys pop onto some of the other streams here, and maybe I'll join you guys there too. So we'll do that. So real quick, so like I said, I took a couple of days off, and I got to tell you, it was kind of interesting because it was scheduled time off for a couple of weeks already. I had already planned it. It just happened to happen when the market was seeing some selling pressure, and before going into my break, I was looking at some uptrend in the last video I posted on a couple of days ago was why I think Bitcoin would hit bottom in April. And so I'll certainly cover that a little bit, some thoughts there. But man, it was kind of interesting not knowing the price of Bitcoin for 2 days, because where I went was, it wasn't like remote, but where I was staying was no cell phone service, as weird as that is. And so there was like no phone service. You couldn't open up any apps, any media, any charts. And I honestly didn't know what the price of Bitcoin was for 2 days. And it was kind of weird. I was like, whoa, it's like getting withdrawals, start getting the shakes. And it's like, maybe we should drive into town. Maybe we should hook up to a Wi-Fi network somewhere. But needless to say, I survived somehow. And no, my trading account was in cash, so I didn't buy the dip. And I don't think I've missed the dip personally, so that'll give you a clue as to where I think we are going. But I didn't. I had my trading account in cash. I was only going to be away for a couple of days, so I figured, well, worst case scenario, I missed the dip and I got to buy a little higher, but it's okay. So here we are. So Bitcoin between $6,800, $6,900. We're seeing the volume coming in a little bit. The RSI, however, is not quite where I think it should be if we're going to have that washout low, which, even though we are stretched to the downside a little bit, we've already seen some pretty decent selling in the last week. I mean, it's been a lot. I mean, when you look at just the nominal value of the selling, I mean, we were at 8,900, just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days ago. And here we are sub 6,900. So that is a significant sell-off in just 1 week. So from that perspective, right, coming down 23%, at one point we were down 25, 26%. We're definitely starting to get a little stretched to the downside. But the RSI is kind of my clue. I've been watching it here. It's around 30. It certainly dipped lower earlier in the day when this low hit, but it doesn't feel like the type of washout low that I was looking for. Doesn't mean we can't get a bounce, but those are the type of signs you want to look for, right? So the biggies here are, you want volume spikes, because volume is your friend at the extremes. And so when you have the big lows, volume is your friend, especially after a big significant pullback like the one we saw in February, and then you started to see the big volume spikes. And look at the very bottom just how significant higher, that volume was relative to the prior days. RSI at that point also washed out here at the lows in the mid 20s and went even lower intraday on that green day, which ended up higher. But that was the telltale signs there. The other thing too, so you look at RSI, you look at volume. I also look at the short-term moving averages. So let me clear one of these out for you guys. So you guys know I follow the 10 EMA relatively closely. It's a very shorter term, kind of gives you the near-term signal. And when you're pretty stretched, and every coin will kind of have its normal kind of tolerance level, but for Bitcoin, when it's over 15%, 20% below the 10 EMA, you're getting close. All right. And so you can see here at the lows here in February, this thing went down 34% from the 10 EMA. I mean, that's huge. And so right now, right, we are, I think we're only like 10%. What are we? 11, 12% down from the 10 EMA at one point. We were at 16%. So it is pretty stretched and certainly feels like we're nearing a low. We could bounce, but you got to zoom in to get a little bit more of an accurate feel for where we're at. So looking at the 4-hour charts, the good on this chart here is this big green bar that we saw right there. So that's a nice reversal on the 4-hour, especially coming off the lows. You had the 2 prior bars, significant volume on the sell side, and you do the same analysis here on the 4-hour chart. You can see the red bar right at the lows, it was down 10% from the 10 EMA. The volume was certainly the highest we've seen. The RSI here hit the 20s, the low 20s on the RSI on the 4-hour. And so if you're doing some more shorter term trading, that's a viable bounce right there into that 4-hour. And that's really all it's been so far, right? We bounced right into that moving average. We're pulling back in here. We're seeing a little bit of a bounce, but this one here kind of feels weak, to be honest with you. It's a couple of 4 hours, and unless this thing out of nowhere decides to pop, but I mean, it's not going to. It's 13 minutes left on this bar. It just feels weak. So I'd be cautious there. It just feels like it's letting the moving average catch up, and we, now have reset the RSI a little bit. It's bounced up into the low 30s, and we could see another leg down. And if that happens, then that will translate into this daily chart, maybe hitting that washout level that I'm looking for as the potential, the near-term bottom. And so right now I'm sitting tight. I have not bought the dip. And here's the thing with the bottoms, guys. It's just like the top, right? Everybody wants to sell at the exact top and get the best price and feel like they sold to the penny at the best price, right? And the same mindset and mentality can happen at the bottom. You can get that FOMO at the bottom, and you don't have to, guys. That's the whole point here, is don't feel like you need to catch the exact bottom. Otherwise, you're going to miss the train and it's going to take off without you. It won't. I promise you. Crypto doesn't go straight up or straight down. There'll be dips. There'll be pauses, even if it does have that washout like we saw in February, where you have that big green daily bar. The next day it went up to the moving average, pulled back, and then it kind of started chopping up slowly, right? And so, don't buy into the notion of, oh man, you have to buy the exact bottom. Get ready to buy when this thing, hits this ultra low point, because if you don't, you're just going to miss out, and it's going to go straight to 12K from there, right? It's like, it's not. I mean, it's just not. And trying to catch the bottom and trying to catch the absolute top is, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to do. And to be just blunt with you, it's a fool's game. Don't try to guess the exact top, guess the exact bottom. There's nothing wrong with buying a little bit off the low when you see the signs of capitulation, when you see the signals that are there, and you're thinking, okay, that probably was a pretty good low, and start scaling back in. Now, that being said, if you feel like you got to catch the bottom, then you ladder into the bottom when you think you're getting close, right? When you think the signs are there, maybe we're getting close, like maybe right now, right? Then don't have to go all in, all out, right? That's kind of the foolishness behind that mindset of selling the top and selling the buying the bottoms, is this notion of, I got to go all in or I got to go all out at the exact most optimal price, right? That's like the saying, I'm going to sell at the exact top and go 100% out, and I'm going to buy at the exact bottom and go 100% back in. You don't, right? And just like here at the top, you know, when you see that it's, hey, maybe we've hit a top, you take a little off the table. When it looks like it's coming down more, you take a little more off the table, right? And at the bottom, you think you've hit a bottom, you buy a little in, and when you see some confirmation to the upside, then you buy a little bit more in it. And that's how I do it. You kind of want to scale in, scale out. Now, if you're trading and you're doing a little bit more active management, you're willing to watch the charts, then, you know, like I will take a larger position when I think it's hit a low point, and watch the stops, and I'll do that. But you still got to leave some capital available to buy the, you know, further low if you think it's going to go lower and so forth. So where I would ladder into the current price zone. So let's say I don't believe this is the bottom, but I think we're close. Then there are a couple of key price points you want to watch here. And the first being in and around that area that we hit in February, right? So we hit a pretty extreme low point here. Let's just call it 6K. It was plus or minus $100 there, depending on the exchange, but let's call it 6K. And that's going to be the first real big level to watch here over the next couple of days if we do get that kind of climactic sell-off, which at this point would not surprise me because remember what I mentioned, you know, you get the selling pressure and it kind of starts off linear, but then it accelerates, and at the lows, the selling is the fastest and the most intense, and then that usually marks the bottom there. So that could happen if we go down to that point. From here down, that is another 13%. And so in and around that zone is maybe where I would start watching for that. And if you wanted a ladder, you would say, you know, in and around here, we could have a pretty decent bounce at that point. So that's a wide range, right? You're talking maybe 6,500 down to, you know, 5,500. If you caught my last video about my idea around, hey, maybe this cycle is more reminiscent of the 2013 cycle and not 2014 like everyone believes, I mentioned some levels to watch in there, and my zone, my buy zone in that video was right here. It was this this zone between the low of February and the last major base we had around 5K. And I thought if we're going to have this big washout climactic selling, this would be an interesting place to look at it here. And that's still in play, in my opinion, especially because of the way the RSI is still sitting here. And so if you look at it from that perspective, then you're talking 6K down to maybe 5. And so would you guys be scared at that point, dumping and selling, or would you be buying, right? And that's usually the way it goes, is you get a lot of panic selling towards the lows when everyone just says, that's it, get me out, I can't take it anymore. And that tends to mark some of the signs of the bottom with a sentiment perspective. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at. And, you know, if you wanted to ladder in, if you were trying to build more of a core position long-term, what I would be doing is, you know, sub current price levels, start making some buy orders here with, you know, probably the meat of it being sub 6. But, you know, I've done that in the past, and usually what happens is my low ball orders don't ever get filled. They kind of get bypassed, it bottoms up higher, and then I have to end up buying further up. But that's usually not a bad problem to have. So some people think 3K, some people think 5K. 3K because that was the big base below the 5K base, right? So we had that big base that formed over the course of June, July, August. This was going into the Bitcoin Cash fork. Then we had the breakout to new highs. We had a mega altcoin rally during this time frame, and then we had the FUD in September that culminated with the China ban, the JP Morgan stuff, and that really marked the low once the news came out in China that they were banning you know, ICOs and exchanges. That was pretty much the low, and then that was the low for the rest of the year, really, that started this mega run. We had this big pullback in November, but that was more of a little pause more than anything. And then we had the big run at the end of the year. So those are the two big bases, right? That 5K and then the 3K. And so near term, I'm looking for a little bit more on the downside, but I think we're getting pretty close. Now, some of the other names to watch here, F, that thing is basically back to the highs here. And so you can see here, this is on BitShares, and it's fully retraced that huge ascending triangle that it formed over the course of last year before it broke out above 400. And from there, it had that big run towards the end of the year, which took it to almost 1,500. And here we are pulling all the way back. And this one I like from a setup perspective, from a longer term perspective. I like it here more than I like Bitcoin, just because it's so washed out. It's just so oversold from all time frames versus USD versus BTC. I mean, this thing has just been so beaten up. I mean, here we have F300, and there's still potentially selling pressure from some of the ICOs, but the fact that it's right back to this old base here, below that, I'm thinking 350, and we're right there. We're kind of in that zone here, and so I'm taking a hard look at ETH here. This is probably the path I'll go. If I buy the dip, I might go with ETH over BTC here, just to get a little bit of outperformance in the near term. You can see here versus BTC, it's still very much in a bad bear trend versus BTC, but just so oversold, washed out near term. Bouncing a little bit here, but you can see the RSI on this thing hits 17. I mean, just very washed out. In the near term, you can see it's already starting to bounce versus Bitcoin, trying to have a little bit of a counter trend rally. And so on the USD side, when I think it's time to move in, I'm going to probably go with ETH, just because that looks like it might have a little bit more near-term outperformance. Taking a look at Litecoin, very similar from a USD pair, but this one also had a huge washout. Look at that volume here on that 4 hour. I mean, that was a huge volume compared to some of these others. Right now it's pulling back. If it closes above that bar around that 122 to 125 range, that'll be good confirmation on that near term, but that's got to happen here in probably the next 1 or 2 4-hour bars. Otherwise, we could see the next leg down, but you are seeing a little bit of a bullish divergence there on the shorter term time frames. The daily bar also very stretched to the downside. So, from the big three, I'm kind of looking at the other names over BTC here in terms of a bounce at least, just because I think they'll outperform a little bit more. So let me go to some of the other names here that we've been seeing some very strong movement relative to BTC, right? So you look at Binance, EOS on Binance here. I'll go to a Bitfinex to show you the USD pair, but I mean, just look at how strong these have been. And in my last video, I mentioned that I believed many of the alts, not all of them, but the alts were at lows versus Bitcoin, if not already bottomed. And even though Bitcoin is continuing to drop, this is why I believe many of these alts have bottomed versus BTC. We saw them hit some pretty extreme lows a week to 2 weeks ago, and look at how this is just continuing to outperform. You look at names like Icon. Icon also huge bounce off the lows. Went up 100+%, pulling in right now. But I mean, this was a major low, I believe, for a lot of these names. Not all of them, though, have done that yet, right? Some of them have, some of them haven't. But that's what I'm thinking is we're getting close. Cardano is looking like it wants to try to put in a low here, has not undercut that low we saw from a couple of weeks ago. And so you're seeing some outperformance starting to show up, certainly not across the board yet. So it's not by any means a alt season has begun, but you're starting to see some of the signs there starting to show up in a lot of these names. Let me go to the other charts here. Hold on. Here's Binance. I've been talking about BNB. Continues to act very strong versus BTC, just stair-stepping its way higher, letting this moving average catch up. And this is the daily chart. Keep in mind, this is a little bit more of a, kind of the bigger view here, but this is why I believe a lot of the alts have hit a low, if not are near their lows versus BTC. We just got to wait for Bitcoin to finally bottom out and say, all right, start going, because the problem is, even though they're going up here versus BTC, and everyone has different goals. If your goal is to accumulate Satoshis, you don't care about the BTC price, then obviously you're looking for this. Other folks are trading with USD pairs, and so the goal there is capital preservation. And you have to have enough outperformance in these names to offset the potential risk in the Bitcoin price dropping. And so that's why, even though some of these are looking strong, I'm still minimizing any kind of trades until I see BTC hit a low point, even if it's a temporary low. But ZIL, another name we've been talking about here, zoom in, younger chart, but this one's breaking out here. And so there's a lot of these names that are definitely looking strong or stronger versus BTC here. But the problem is, if you look at the USD pairs, they're certainly being weighed down because of the bearish tone in BTC. So here's EOS. It's relatively flat versus on the USD side, but that's because it's so strong versus BTC here. So just kind of an interesting dynamic here. That is why I was saying I believed some of these have already hit bottom. If we just cycle through, right, on the USD side, in most everything is still lagging pretty significantly. You have Dash hitting a pretty long time low point here on the USD pair. Not that one. Not that one. That's Bitcoin Gold. Dash, right back down to $300 here. Certainly undercutting this big base that we had back here. And so some of these are just very washed out, in my opinion, and near a low. And so I'm getting ready, guys. So I'm looking at these. I'll do a much more in-depth analysis tomorrow when I do the stream, and I'll take more of your charts and all of that. But I wanted to kind of go through these and give you my opinion on where I think we are at, how to look for some of the signs there of the bottom versus BTC. A little bit of a weekly wrap up. I mean, it certainly has not been a fun week for most in the crypto space. And, a lot of it, too, is just pure market dynamics, right? It's not like we've been hit with this onslaught of bad news after bad news after bad news. It really hasn't been that type of a week, but it's certainly the selling pressure continues. So one of the trends that I was watching here, too, is, and we broke below, was this, this trend that had been touched several times here, and it looked like it was going to break to the downside here just because the selling pressure was there, and so we finally broke. And the other thing too is on the bearish case, putting the bear goggles on here, is the big descending triangle pattern that is in place here. Let me draw that. And that goes out much further there, but you can see there, right? That's just kind of this descending triangle pattern, which tends to break bearish, which is another reason I think we might get that little washout to the downside now that we're breaking below that trend on a closing basis, right? We're going to be below these closing lows in February. I know we have these intraday lows, but we're now starting to close below that. And that's a significant break when you close below prior closing lows. It just shows you that you're starting to lose a little bit of support. So that's the zone I'm watching, guys, kind of going into the next couple of days. We'll see how it looks by the time we do the live stream tomorrow. I will schedule that as soon as I'm done here, but that'll be probably around 10, 11 a.m. Arizona Standard, so Mountain Standard Time right now. So, or excuse me, we're Pacific. I forget the time zone changes there. So that's kind of the zone I'm looking at here over the next couple of days. I haven't bought the dip yet. There might be a little bit of a bounce here in the near term, but that's the zone to be watching here in the next, let's call it a day or so. The first key support is the February low, right around 6K. We could touch that. If we do and really saw a strong rally from that point, that'd be a pretty interesting big double bottom in play here. And so that's something to be watching here. I think a lot of people are starting to expect that. But we've come off quite a bit here. Now, to my, if you guys missed it, go check it out. I want to get your feedback on that. But I was doing a video the other day talking about the big potential for a, let me go to the weekly chart. Here we go. And so I was talking about this here in my video the other day. The big narrative right now is this cycle is basically a repeat of 2014. And the top happened in January, December, and we are in for this very long 18-month bear market where we just go down, grind lower, 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 lower. And then later on in 2019 or 2020, we'll start another run up. But I kind of came with this and saying, what if this is repeating the 2013 cycle where we had this big pullback that lasted about 13 weeks back then, took us down about 73%. And then we had this mega bull run that took us another new high here. But this was a significant run. So in 2012, 2013, the price of Bitcoin went from $10, yes, $10, up to about $200. That was huge, right? That was a 2,000% run. And then we pulled back all the way back down to $70. And then we went from 70 to $1,100. And then that started the big pullback, and that went from there. And so my idea was, what if we have a repeat of that? And instead of us living out the 2014 cycle type of thing where we have this big drawn out year and a half long bear, we see something similar, and we bottom out here in the near term, a couple weeks or so, if not next week. And then we see a similar big cycle where we have another 6 months or so of this massive run. Well, even if I'm not saying it's going to go up another 1,000% like it did then, because if it did, it would take us to 84,000 Bitcoin. But even if it was another run to new highs, I mean, we could be at new highs here before the end of the year. And so that was just something I was thinking about. And, and from that perspective, it kind of makes sense, because then you would have new highs. And then at that point, you would establish the bear market that takes you down a year and a half, which may take us to the next halvening, which is in 2020. And so maybe you have that big cycle top here this year, and then it just kind of pulls back through the next halvening, similar like it did last time, where the halvening kind of was an intermediate low. So that's something I'm keeping in mind. I know everyone's so bearish right now and just ready to write this thing off. And man, wouldn't that be something if everybody just decides to sell here at 6K and then we hit new highs within a few months? That would certainly be interesting. So because of that, I mean, yeah, I took some profits on the longs and all that stuff, but I've got a core position that I will remain invested in crypto. Just because I'm a long-term believer in the technology in the market. And you got to keep in mind too, I mean, I was buying some of these core positions at much lower prices. ETH and Litecoin, my initial buys were at single digits, right? So even though they're down significantly, you're up pretty big still. So, but I'm looking to potentially see where this thing bottoms out. And if it does look like we're going to start a big cycle higher, time to get aggressive with some of these names here. And I'm going to be looking at the alts, honestly, just because I think, and I continue to believe, they have hit a pretty good low, at least in the near term, versus BTC. And so I'll be looking at some of the stronger names. Cardano, I already talked to Binance. I'm liking ETH, honestly, guys. I really am liking ETH here, especially since it's retraced this entire move. I'm watching ICX here, like ICX from a longer term perspective here. NEO. Anybody like NEO at $50? Holy cow, NEO at $50. NEO is an interesting one because it could, this is the level I'm watching on NEO. It's kind of back at this base here. And if it goes a little lower, I mean, it's kind of hard to see here, but between $50 and $40 is kind of the zone I'm watching for NEO. And so there's a few of those that are kind of the stronger names, in my opinion, and I'm going to be watching those, as well as some of the newer up-and-coming names, which have just lately shown a lot of resilience in this pullback, a lot of strength. And so now is the time to start doing the research on those projects you are hearing about, to those newer names, and get ready, because when things turn, they tend to start taking off here pretty quick. So let me see here. A couple of these. Has the death cross happened? Hey, that's a good question. I would bet it did. Let's go take a look and see if the death cross has happened. I'm going to switch out because I'm going to leave that chart in place for a couple of months to see how it plays out. So that's going to be interesting to see. I've got a separate thing for the death cross here, so let me load that, and let's see if that has happened. Triple moving average. So let me go to the daily, dollar, Bitstamp. I've got the moving averages on here, and yes, it looks like it has happened. And so you have today the 50 EMA is sitting at what is it at? Well, you can see they're basically about $50 apart. So officially it is lower. You've got, I'm looking at my charts here. So there it is. It's official. Somebody called CNBC. Oh, so all right. That's it. It's the bottom. The death cross happened. So NEO, so we covered a few of those. Let me see here. I'll cycle through a couple of these here. Salt. Are you planning on using co-vesting? I have not. I've thought about that. Somebody has asked me about that as well, to talk about, hey, how can they follow me? How can we do stuff like that? Here's something. Now you kind of reminded me of something here, which I don't usually share a whole lot, just because I tend to keep it limited, as you guys know. I do have a private Slack group that I manage, and it's open right now for the next round. And so this is kind of a little bit more intimate, if you want to say it that way, where I kind of post my thoughts daily, if not multiple times a day. This is more for the folks that want to be a little bit more active, because I do more shorter term trading here, and kind of take the profits in and out of either USD or BTC. And so that's what I'll do. I'll post it. It's got a private channel. There's also a bunch of general public channels. There's an ICO channel. There's chart channels. There's alerts that we're testing out here. So there's a lot to it. It's a really good community, but we do keep it relatively small for now. We're working on another product, which will be a little bit broader and a little bit more affordable, which will allow for a bigger crowd. So if you're interested in that, noteinvestor.com/training, and then you got to type in insiders, because I don't even have this linked on my web page, because it does sell out usually, and so I don't keep it active or advertise it too much. Usually the folks that get notification of this every month are my newsletter subscribers and my course students that have bought the video course. So that tends to be. So if you're new to technical analysis and you've not done anything or any trading, this is probably not for you, because it's going to be a lot of charts and a lot of that stuff. So noteinvestor.com/training/insiders. And I will close that out on Monday, regardless if it sells out or not, because I got to kick off the next group. Time to get going, especially if the market's going to bottom in April. Got a party to do here. So, all right. Do you think we should sell off or reinvest into BitConnect? No comment. I will not comment on BitConnect ever, except for maybe to make fun of it, but never comment on it. Were you planning on investing in BitConnect? No. Let's see here. So I'm looking at a couple of comments here. We are near the end of this stream. This was just intended to be a quick update, but if you missed it at the beginning, I am going to do a longer, more in-depth live stream tomorrow, and then I will do charts and go down the list and anything you guys want to talk about. Let me see here. That is some ice in my drink here. You know, it's Arizona and the sun's coming out now and it's getting hot, and it is Friday, but unfortunately this is a clean, non-spiked drink. This is the work of the futures market. Man, you know, there's a lot to be said about that. I would not doubt that, especially considering that the futures went live right there. Coincidence? Maybe. Let's see here. Thanks, Evelyn. Thanks for joining. I think we are it. So let me see here. Oh, you know what? I want to mention another thing. If you guys are in LA, there's going to be a crypto investment conference May 1st and May 2nd, and I will be there. And so if you guys are there, let me know. We'll do a little meetup or something and get some meet and greet going. That'd be fun. Drinks Kool-Aid with an umbrella. Drinking the Kool-Aid here. Oh, let's see here. If I already filled, should I sell this? Is about, no, not necessarily. Like if I was holding right now, if I had just bought, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily sell. It's just I would always just put a stop in place. And there's a good chance that this is a pretty good low near term. When you look at the 4-hour, there's a little bit of a bearish divergence form or bullish divergence forming here on this RSI. So maybe, but it hasn't confirmed. No way, no how, right? You got to break this moving average first, and the confirmation will come if you can get back into the 7,300 range. Below that, I mean, breaking to new lows around 64, 6,500. That's, I'd probably play it tight, but maybe that sets up the double bottom and then we go from there. So not necessarily, just right now, everything's risky. So you just got to play this one tight, in my opinion. Cool. Looks like some of you guys are going to be in LA. So I like that. And is there going to be a face reveal? Absolutely. Actually, I'm going to do the face reveal before my LA meeting. Because we hit 50,000 subscribers. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for subscribing. Smash that like button. I don't know what took you guys so long. I would have done this face reveal a long time ago. But I will. I'll set it up on a separate video and all that fun stuff. Cool. Let me see here. Did we break the downtrend on the 15 minutes here? Let me go to the shorter term time frame. And I think we're close, guys. We're definitely due for a bounce. But it just depends on which time frame you're trading. I mean, if you're doing the shorter term stuff, I think we're due for a bounce. If you're doing the daily, probably not a bad place to look at it here, especially some of the other names I mentioned, like ETH and all that. Don't do it, Node. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to wear like a mask or a helmet or something. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still skeptical. Let's put it that way. I'm skeptic here. I'm going to wait. But I'd rather just wait for it. Like I said, you don't need to catch the exact low. If you see some confirmation, then it looks like it's go time. Take a shot. But I'm going to wait. See how things look tomorrow. Face paint. Batman. I'm gonna do a Superman thing. I'm gonna show up like in a suit, and then I'm gonna underneath my suit shirt is gonna be the Node icon. Oh, tired of eating hot dogs. Man, you guys are funny. You can tell it's Friday. You can tell everyone is had a long week. I had a long week, man. I went 2 days without looking at the charts. That was painful. Oh. Actually, it was quite nice. I'm not going to lie. It was quite nice. Took took a little bit to get used to, but then once you got used to it, it was like, hey, I should do this every month. Did you wear your underwear on the outside like Superman? No, because then that means I would have to wear a cape and boots. I ain't going to do that. All right. Well, too much reliance on Bitcoin. You have a good point there. And that's the thing, right? Just Bitcoin, it dominates the market. There's just no doubt. And I did a meetup here locally, and I was talking about crypto trading. And that's one of the things I pointed out right away is when you're trading crypto, it's different from many other markets in the sense that Bitcoin rules. I mean, it just leads everything. It just has such an influence, and you have to watch it even if you're not trading it, because it does have that much influence on the overall market, at least for now, right? Maybe that changes in the future, but for now, that's just the way it goes. And so you got to look at that. By the time we meet up, BTC will be over 10K. I would bet on it. We'll see. I'm going to do a giveaway. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate you guys joining on this last-minute impromptu stream. Hit that like button, ladies and gentlemen. A couple of levels to look at. I already outlined those. I will be back on the mic tomorrow, early my time, and we'll do a much more in-depth, and I'll take a look at your charts and some of the names you guys want to take a look at there. So appreciate you all joining. Have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, night, whatever it may be. Have a good weekend, everyone. Take care.